4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast here. Today we do our first Zoom podcast through Zoom with my brother Dustin again. And today we talked on some subjects. We gave ourselves some subjects to talk about and we tried to fit them all in the episode. It worked and it didn't. I kind of rushed things there near the end. You'll hear in my tone that I speed up in how I talk, so hopefully that doesn't affect the podcast too much. We talk about what it's like for Dustin when he was in the reserves, and then we talk about what it's like when you've got lots of ambitions and things on the go, and then side with that we talk about planning and scheduling things and being true to that. We kind of touch on where you need to make yourself available, where your time availability is important a little bit, and then we talk about some airsoft, which transitions into a little bit of hunting as well. So if you're interested in any of these subjects or could use some firsthand experience in any of these, whether it's some business advice, what we went through in starting a business together, to scheduling and what we have on our thoughts on scheduling and the benefits to that, to just having people taking their core and getting into airsoft. Those subjects are all talked about in this podcast. So let's just dive right into it. And okay, so we're gonna do the three topics. On my last recording, I did my three topics. So why don't you start with one of your topics and we'll dive into it and give back some conversation.
Okay. So I haven't thought of a very good third topic yet, but I think my first two topics are pretty golden.
Okay.
Let's see, which one would you either talk about? The first one I was going to talk about would be the experience I had in like military training.
Yeah, okay, well, let's just start with that. Why don't you tell us about your experience in military training?
Okay.
I
served 5. Sorry?
Yeah, how did you end up getting involved into military?
Well, I always wanted to be in the military, right? Like at first I wanted to be a police officer, but then I kind of transferred from wanting to be a police officer to joining the military. So I joined. Let's clarify when I say join the military. I joined the Canadian Armed Reserve Forces.
Okay, what's the difference between those two?
So the difference between a regular force member and a reserve member is that a regular force member is someone who has to sign a contract. Right? So if you were to join the regular force, you're signing, I think if I recall correctly, the minimum that you could sign is for 5 years.
Okay.
And as a reservist, you're not signing any term contract. So in fact, if you wanted to work full time, you would have to apply for a particular tasking, right? Like I did a couple of taskings in Wainwright, which is in Alberta, CFB Wainwright. And when they do taskings for the reservists, they send it out to they send the tasking openings out to different units. And then people apply for them, and whoever's the most qualified for that job will get it. Right? So I did a couple of those, but they're usually only like a few months at a time. Like most of them were about 3 months, 3 months at a time taskings. And then of course you have like your basic training. The basic training for regular forces lasts a lot longer. And I hear it's way more intense. You know, when you talk to some of the people who've done it, and then they're training the reserve forces, they kind of tell you otherwise. But the majority of people are like, oh, when you're in reg force, it's way more intense because you're there every day. You have no choice. It's like
it's a prolonged experience. And
that's right.
Yeah.
But when you have someone who's done has been in reg force and transferred over to reserve force after their contract, they say that the reserve force training is harder because of two reasons. Reason number one, they say it's because with reserve forces, going home in between courses is harder because it's harder to leave. the second time.
Okay.
Right? In order to leave your families and go back. And then with the Reg Force, you have to do the whole thing. There is no in-betweens, right? You have no choice but to do all your training in one go, which is what I did. I did all of my basic training in one go. You have the choice to do that as a reservist. And then the other thing they say that makes it harder is that the reserve forces actually have to be trained on the same stuff that the Reg Force does in a shorter amount of time.
Okay.
There's like, as a reservist, there was no weapon or tactics training other than CQC, which is close quarter combat, that a Reg Force has learned that I haven't. Right? Like, I know how I've been trained on all the weapons. And now this is talking about infantry, because that's where I went. I was an infantry soldier. So I couldn't really speak for like artillery and armored and stuff like that. But for infantry, yeah, they say it's harder because, yeah, you have to do the same amount in a shorter amount of time. The only exception to that is that there's specialty training, specialty gunfight training, and specialty CQC training. And it's really hard.
What's CQC? What's that?
That stands for close quarters combat.
Okay.
Right, so that's like breaching and taking a house, like if there's a building, going in the building and taking it and securing it. And then specialty gunfight training is essentially it trains you to be able to use your weapons more accurately and a bit more smooth. Like if you were to see some videos of like a Marine or a Canadian Forces Reg member doing their drills, it would look quite a bit different from with me doing my drills. And that's because, one, they have more experience than I would, and two, Reg Force go and do the advanced gunfight training courses. So you do learn a little bit throughout your reserve career with the gunfight courses, but not to the extent that a Reg Force would learn. As a reservist, you have the choice to go and do those courses, but the issue is that those courses are reserved for Reg Force. So essentially, they don't hold those courses specifically for reservists. So if they do a course and there's openings after the people who are in Reg Force that require it, then they'll be like, hey, we have some openings. Do you have any master corporals or sergeants that need to do advanced gunfight training? And then if they did, then yes, then they can apply to go.
Right.
People who are private or corporal don't generally get to do those kinds of courses.
Okay. And,
yeah.
So you ended up going in. How long were you in the reserves for? You were a reservist.
I was a total of 5 years, actually.
So you could have done a like the minimum full-time term then if you had chosen that path. You could have signed up for 5 years, and hey, so if you had done that, you would have maybe put some money into some pension and stuff, but you don't get that with a reservist.
You don't get that with a reservist. Also, you don't get anything towards a pension if you just signed a minimum contract either.
Oh, you got to do like a 20-year or 22-year contract?
I think it's, if you do 20 years, I don't know if this is 100 because it's been a few years since I've been in. And literally the pension process of it for both Reg Force and Reserve Force changed like 3 times while I was in there. But if I recall correctly, a Reg Force to get pension has to serve at least a 20-year contract.
Okay.
So they have to it has to be a full-on career to do that. Doing Reg Force is super tempting for a lot of people too, though, because it's sort of like the military does a bit of a trade-off, right? So I did a tasking where I was in charge of a section. So a section is just a particular group of people, generally between 6 to 8 people. So I was in charge of a full section of Navy groups, and we were teaching them how to do land ops. Because obviously Navy does mostly on the boats and in the water, right?
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, if we're learning stuff on boats out in the ocean, we go to the Navy and they're like, yeah, sure, we'll train you guys. And then vice versa. They need to learn tactics about being on land, then we'll train them. I forgot where I was going with this.
I don't know. Well, not to steer you off topic even further, but you know what I've been watching lots lately? I've been watching YouTube videos of people fighting off pirates on cruise ships.
On cruise ships?
Oh, not cruise ships, on cargo ships, like transport ships.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pirates come in, and I don't know how I got onto that on YouTube, but that's what I've been into watching those videos where they do lots of like warning shots at boats that are approaching, and they'll have like 2 or 3 little boats trying to approach the large boat at different sections, and the guys are makeshift little barriers on these decks, and they fire down into the water to give warning shots because these pirates are trying to board them and stuff like that.
Oh, that's pretty intense.
Yeah.
That's the same tasking I was talking about. It's funny because one of the guys there, I don't remember what they're called, but every Navy ship has highly trained troops. And when I say highly trained, I mean highly trained in advanced gunfighting and close quarter combat, because that's what they're doing when they're on a ship, right? So essentially their main job is to defend the ship if they're boarded. And one of the guys that I was in charge of training, that was his job. He was just there to learn more land ops. But so I was teaching everybody the gun drills, and I swear, man, this guy, obviously, I guess it makes sense because he's Reg Force, but he could perform his gun drills so fast that I actually had to ask him to do it again slower to make sure he wasn't missing a step. And he wasn't. He was so fast. I just looked at him like, why are you even here?
It's just precise.
Yeah. Although I did notice, like, after we started doing some of the land ops, he did need a little bit of correction on some of the stuff, but for the most part, he knew what he was doing.
Yeah. Once you get into, like, if you're deep involved and you start going to all these different training things, I'm sure some of that training overlaps and becomes more like instinctive behavior. Yeah. So why don't you talk about some of the trainings you did just as a reservist, like some of the beginning trainings and some of the stuff that you had to do, and then stuff that you chose to do.
Okay. So let's do some of the stuff that I had to do. So I did, for the infantry, there's 3 different courses that you have to do. There's BMQ, which stands for Basic Military Qualifications. And then there's BIQ, which is Basic Infantry Qualifications. And then there's DP1. I don't actually remember what the DP1 stands for, but essentially what it does is when you join the military, you have to do... Oh, excuse me.
Oh, I got a cough here.
It's a good thing we're doing this on Zoom then.
Contagious through the microphone.
I know. What the heck, man? Getting me sick? Anyways, so when you join the military, everyone, regardless of your trade, is classified as a soldier first. So when you see someone who's in headquarters and they're working on computers or doing communications, they all have to do the same basic military qualifications, because every single person is classified as a soldier first.
Okay.
So that's the point of that's the point of BMQ. Everyone in the military has to do this. Then after you pass that, you move on to your basic trade qualifications, which in my case was infantry. And then after that, you move to your advanced trade qualifications, which would be the DP1. So that's where you learn most of the weapons and fighting tactics, which is pretty sweet. But let's start with BMQ. BMQ is pretty sweet. I got super lucky because I was put in CFB Edmonton. So CFB meaning Canadian Forces Base. And it is one of the nicest bases in the country. It is so nice. The barracks, it's like almost a 5-star hotel compared to whatever else you get. Like, especially compared to like a Wainwright. Wainwright is way worse than CFB Edmonton. But it's super nice base and stuff. So I got lucky there. And I also got lucky because the people doing my training were paratroopers.
That's sweet.
Yeah, super sweet. It's actually a very, very famous company. It's the 3 PPCLI. I don't know if you've heard of them.
No, it's quite the name.
Obviously, there's PPCLI, 2 PPCLI, and then 3 PPCLI.
Oh, yeah.
And those super hardcore guys, and they're all paratroopers, which means these are the kind of guys that when you can't get to somewhere, you fly over and you drop them on top of them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So they're super intense and hardcore guys.
Yeah, those guys do close to Earth jumps too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because
so
during
sketchy.
my super sketchy. So I know this is a little ways into the course here, but on one of our weekends of leave, we went to the West Edmonton Mall, and a buddy of mine, he was actually my fire team partner at the time. We were like, let's do bungee jumping. We've never done it before, but let's do it. And I remember waiting in line. I was getting all nervous, and I was like, oh, don't worry, I can do this. And I built up the confidence, and I got to the edge, and I was so confident in my abilities, and they're just like, you got this. I'm a little scared of heights, like I got the point where it's like you look over the edge and things start like getting further and further.
You feel that
That's
vertigo?
me when I look over the edge, but I was yeah, exactly. And I was so confident that I was going to jump, and they give you a countdown. They're like 3, 2, 1, bungee. So they did that, and I jumped out, and like my feet left the platform, but my hands instinctively grabbed the railings behind me.
Did you end up dangling?
So my arms were like in such a way that when I jumped, I like bounced back.
Oh, you couldn't push.
But I caught myself back on there, but I was just like, didn't even realize it. I was like, what the heck just happened? And the guy looks at me, he's like laughing, and he's just like, don't worry, this is really common. It just means that you're more scared than you want to be. So I guess what happens is that when you go to jump off something and you're nervous, if your hand as soon as your hands touch something, it's instinct to hold on to it.
Right.
So I didn't realize it, but when I threw my hands back, they had hit the railings.
Yeah.
And I had just grabbed onto it.
Yeah.
And after that, all my confidence went out the window. I was so scared. I looked at the guy and I was like, you might have to push me. And they take photos of you doing this, right? So I'm like, okay, I can do this. It took me like a good 3, maybe 5 minutes to build up the confidence to go. And I look at the photos. I was so embarrassed because I kind of curled up and rolled up the edge.
I think
that.
I think that's common because that's I went bungee jumping and I went full confident. Like there was not much delay for me at all, and I didn't try and catch myself or nothing. And
I know I saw the video.
In my brain, I was like, arms spread up, free falling, just leaned off the edge. But the video was more like I turtled and curled off the edge. Sam says that it looks like I just gave up and died and rolled over the edge. Sam also says with vertigo, for her, when I'm up high, things feel shaky and whatever, kind of like your senses telling you, no, stay away from the edge. And Sam, she says sometimes she gets the urge, your body's telling you that you need to take a step. Do you know what I mean? She gets that feeling, that light, maybe I don't know, almost like butterflies in your feet, like when you go down a hill too fast, you get butterflies in your stomach. It's like that, only in your feet, where it's like, okay, we're up here, time to take a step. It's like your body, I don't know, tricking you.
It's like, just go for it.
Yeah.
Just do it.
It's kind of a messed up thing that your brain can do that. Okay, let's jump back on track with what you had going on. You were at the Edmonton.
Okay. Edmonton base.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on, let me finish the bungee jumping story.
Oh, it's
It'll
not
only
done.
take a second. So no, it's not done. It's not done. So they take pictures of you, right? And so I went and I looked like a total coward, whimpering off the side. And then my fire team buddy went, no hesitation. And no joke, he did the most beautiful swan dive I have ever seen. I was just like, now I just look like a total idiot. And at first I was like, you know what? Nobody at the base has to know about this. And it was all good. And then I don't know how, but as soon as we were done leaving, we got back into the barracks. My master corporal was waiting in my room. And there's 4 people per room. So you share a room with your fire team partner and then one other fire team partner in your section. So he's sitting there on the dressers waiting for us. And as I walk in, he makes complete eye contact with me. And he was just like, Joulie, I've heard. And I was just like, I just stopped and I look at him like, what have you heard? And he's just like, he stands up. He's like, I heard you cowered like a little bitch. And I was like, how do you know that? We just got back. And he's like, as a paratrooper, you disgust me. I was like, this is so embarrassing. Who told you? He's just like, nothing hides. So to this day, I have no idea how he knows.
It's pretty funny though.
But
Maybe he was there and he
someone
saw
ratted me.
Yeah, someone said something.
Maybe.
Okay, so let's get back to Edmonton.
Yeah. So, I forgot what I was saying.
So we were talking about some of the trainings that you ended up having to do, and you were at the base in Edmonton for some training that you were going to do, and those parachuters were going to be there.
Right. So we did, one of the cool things about CFB Edmonton is that it's actually an Air Force base as well. So you get to see all the jets doing their stuff. But when you do your BMQ, the things that you learn most are military ethics, like how not to treat people and how to treat people. And as a reservist, they always remind you that you're here by choice. But then they also explain to you how there's like a delicate balance. Like, yes, you're here by choice, but keep in mind that you're here to be turned into soldiers, right? We're not here to babysit you and stuff. But there were some people who just couldn't understand that, right? They give you, essentially every room has to be the same. Now, the reason they do this is, one, you need to have really good, what they call SA, which is situational awareness, which means you have to pay really good attention to details, right? And you have to know the importance of being uniform. So it was actually to the point where not even your rucksack can be different, right? So say, for example, if you're with the point for that is if you're with your section and one of your guys goes down or something and you need to grab something out of his bag, you know where it is.
Oh, I see. So it's all
right.
So the bags all mirror each other, even the stuff that you put in it, like the contents that it's holding. So it's like if you have to grab a different bag, it's like grabbing your own bag. Everything's where it's supposed to be.
Yes. The only time that they made an exception for that for our course is with your day bag, because it's so small and you only carry 72 hours worth of stuff in there. Sorry, not 72 hours. It's a day bag.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. No, you only carry 48 hours worth of stuff in your day bag. So 2 days worth. So you don't carry very much stuff in there. So that was the exception. When it came to your rucksack and if you had extra ammo, especially if you were the number 2 for a machine gunner, everything had to be the same so that if you went down and someone needed to grab your ammunition or something like that, you knew where it was. Because you can't sit there wasting time in the middle of a gunfight scouring through someone's bag.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's logical.
Yeah.
Huh.
And then, of course, attention to detail comes up with finding, like, traps that are set and noticing things from a distance, like people set up in windows. So,
right.
You know, you have to be able.
This is the type of training that you were going through while you were there?
Yeah. So they're always teaching you pay attention to detail. Everything has to be uniform. You have to be able to do this, right? But in that sense, they give you one drawer in your room that can be yours. And I remember, yeah, you can put whatever you want in there. They don't care. But some people didn't understand that when they did a room inspection, they can still go through your personal drawer.
Mm-hmm.
There's no privacy,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Right.
I assumed that going in, but there was a couple people, and it got so bad to the point where military human resources had to come in, and we had to stop all of our training because someone was writing complaints about the staff being mean and how they've been like
You
when they
kind of expect that a little bit.
Yeah. And then when you go through your basic training, they do, if you mess something up, like, for example, when you leave the barracks, every room has to be locked.
Mm-hmm.
So if the last person out of your room forgets to lock the door, your room will get what's called room tossed. And they go in your room and they just destroy it. Like, beds flipped over, dressers thrown on the floor. And, like, if there's 2 rooms unlocked, they have a heyday because they'll mix everybody's stuff up from the 2 rooms. Yeah, and I remember one time I wasn't the last one out of the room, but I went and I was in formation, and my fire team partner came beside me, and I was like, all right, awesome, we're here. We're not the last ones. Did you lock the room?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, oh no, I didn't lock the room. I was like, I'm going. And I'm just hauling, like, in full kit, got my rucksack on, just giving it. I'm just like, gotta lock the room. And then I go, and as I turn the corner to close our room door, there was three master corporals in our room, and I caught them with one of our bags ripping stuff out. And I was just like, look at, and they made eye contact with me. They're like, Joulie, just leave. And I was like, I'm too late. It's been done. And when we got back, the people across the hall from us forgot to lock their room too. So both rooms got tossed, and we had like mattresses in the hallways, and half someone's closet was tossed into the other room, and vice versa. But one of the guys, I don't know if he was in one of the rooms that got tossed or not at that time, but he was writing complaints about how they were going through like the personal drawers. Because when they did a room toss, they tossed everything, including your personal drawer, right? So it was this big thing, and it was funny because it was like, with a guy that was doing HR was like, do you guys have any concerns or anything? Like, what's going on? We've been getting lots of complaints. And one of the guys was like, well, you know what? Yeah, I'm concerned with the lack of privacy when they do the room tosses. Like, they're going through our personal drawers and stuff, and it's just, I think it's an invasion of privacy. And the guy just looks at me and he goes, oh, did they hurt your feelings? Yeah. And he was just like, everyone would thought that he would just like kind of stop it there and be like, okay, maybe I'm being ridiculous. But he's straight up, he's like, yeah, they hurt my feelings. And the guy was just like, maybe you should go home.
Yeah, they were probably not.
And then,
they're
like,
probably not cut out for this. Yeah, this is full disclosure kind of community here.
Yeah, you can't really be soft when it comes to combat. But anyways, sorry, I keep getting sidetracked with all these funny stories. But so they do all those little training, like attention to details, and that even goes into cleaning the barracks, right? You have to clean everything spotless. I remember one time we lost an entire weekend because whoever was cleaning the laundry room didn't get every speck of lint out of the lint holders. And it's like, it's that picky. And the reason they do that is to see how you handle yourself under pressure and through failure and how you're going to cope. It's only later on, like, I didn't know this until DP1, but they actually determine whether you will pass the inspections before they even do it.
They'll just find something to
so they have a little meeting, and it apparently it's based on how well you do throughout the week. So your weekend is determined by your progress throughout the whole week.
I gotcha.
And the course warrant officer will say in the meeting before they do the inspection whether they pass the inspection or not. And then if they say no, you could have that place spotless, and they will find something. But if they say, like, I remember one time we got back from field exercise, and I was cleaning my weapon, and I was so focused on cleaning my weapon that I didn't I wasn't paying attention to that. This is bad situational awareness. Let's point that out. So this was 100% my fault for not noticing the details. But the people who were in charge of cleaning the bathroom called out last call for showers, and I didn't hear them.
Mm-hmm. Ooh.
And yeah, so I didn't get to shower. I grabbed my stuff, and they were all like, no, bathroom's closed for the night. I was like, oh man. I was so focused on cleaning my weapon, I didn't get to shower. He's like, well, if you shower, the entire bathroom needs to be cleaned all over again. And I was like, nope, like, I'll take the hit, guys. I'll take the hit. But I guess they determined that we would pass the inspection before they did the inspection. And when they saw me, they were like, what the F happened? And I was just like, and I explained to them what happened and stuff. And so I told them, I was like, but I know I have a couple minutes. It only takes me, like, I can shower in less than a minute and a half. And I can clean my whole body. And they're just like, and the one was so mad at me that he was like, nope, no shower for you. You're going to look like this all day. And I was just like, oh man, like this really sucks. My hair was a disaster. I had like half wiped off can paint on my face, and my weapon was spotless.
That makes, well, there you go. I'd rather that work than, have a little grease on your face. Tell you the truth, man, like missing a shower one time, whoop-de-doo in the big scheme of things. Like, it's not that
That's
big
what
of a
I
deal.
thought.
No one's there to look pretty, right? Like, you're not showing off to the other boys.
And the funny thing is that I thought that I was in a lot of trouble, but the one officer got in way more trouble than I did from the commander of the entire base.
Why?
Because I didn't know this. Apparently I should have known this, and the one officer did. But one of the head honchos of the entire Canadian military just happened to be coming to that Wainwright base that day.
Oh.
So this whole notice went around how everything has to look perfect. Everyone has to be a model troop. And here I am, messy hair, can paint on half my face, wrinkled clothes. I'm just like, just a total dirtbag, right? And so I guess the officer in charge of the whole base caught wind of this, and he called me. He summoned me, he summoned the sergeant, he summoned my 2IC and my in command in charge of my section. And it was this big deal. And he talked to me first. Well, first he talked to all of us, and then he wanted the sergeants and one officer to leave so he could talk to just me. And it was the one was like so nervous for him to talk to me. And he was like going over all the drills and how to properly enter a room when you enter a room that has a commanding officer in it, you have to do it a specific way. Right? You got to go in, you got to come to attention, you got to salute them, and kind of show your respect to them and stuff. So he's going over all the drills and stuff. So he was asking me, he's like, "Why do you look like a total piece of poop?" But he just didn't use those words. And I explained to him, and I was like, "Sir, to be honest, I take full responsibility. I was so focused on cleaning my weapon because, as you know, all the training we ever do is focused on your weapon comes first, right? Because that's who we are." And I just wasn't paying attention, and I didn't hear my course mates call for last shower. So I didn't want to screw them over because I knew that they'd get in trouble if the showers were dirty in the morning. So I took the bullet. It was my fault. And he's just like, okay. He's like, I understand that. And he's like, you know what? I really respect that you took care of your weapon first. But that lesson is based in field training. If you're out in the field, your weapon comes first. Here on the base, you have a little bit of leeway. Take care of yourself and then clean your weapon. And I was like, that makes total sense. But apparently he lost his mind on the warrant officer.
Oh, really?
I could hear him. I was leaving the building. I could hear him yelling. I was like, oh, man, I thought I messed up. Yeah. But he was so mad that he had a troop that looked like garbage. Because he asked why I looked like that way.
And you had
even
reason.
Though it's in the middle of the day. Yeah. And I told him, I was like, oh, well, as punishment, I wasn't allowed to shower. I didn't realize that those words totally threw my warrant under the bus. But,
well,
it is what it is.
You didn't throw him under the bus. You were being honest. That's the true story. You know, in those sort of situations, that's what you do. You just tell the truth, all right? And, you know, that guy, he can either take it as a vindictive sort of scenario, or he can take it from like a learning aspect. You're not responsible for how other people treat him on his actions in a certain scenario. You can only be honest about what you did in participating in that. So when you tell the truth, you're not throwing people under the bus. You're just being
Not
forward.
making up a lie.
Yeah, you're not
That's
lying. You're not shredding the truth. You're not putting yourself at risk to cover someone else when it's just the thing played out the way it did, and nobody's, you know, should be taking responsibility or covering for anybody else. Everybody needs to stand up and take the repercussions for the part that they played in a scenario.
That's fair.
Yeah, that's how I look at it. Man, well, that's 34 minutes on that first topic. I would love to keep talking about this.
Didn't even talk about any of the training. There's so many cool weapons training I could have talked about.
Let's jump into that for another podcast. Let's jump into the next topic you have lined up.
Okay, my next topic is a total beauty, I think, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I have been coming up with some very, very ambitious goals.
Mm-hmm.
And very little time to execute them. So this topic is that, what it's like to have super ambitious goals, but the lack of time, drive, and energy to execute them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so...
sorry, you cut out there for a second.
Okay, go ahead.
I think that this is the topic that is perfect for us to talk about, because I feel like you and I are on the same page on this.
Yeah,
I feel like we both have some pretty ambitious goals and things that we want to accomplish, but it's hard to make the time. It's to put the time aside to do it.
And it's more than just time for me. It's really a lot easier to come up with a plan of success than you would think, especially when it comes to like starting businesses and stuff like that. There's so many more options out there that you can do, like quick, like just mowing lawns. You're doing a lawn maintenance business, you know, it's a quick mindset to get that going. And then, you know, jumping into lawn mowing to window washing or to house washing and trying to combine them both. So you've added on to that, and then starting like a hobby business, or, you know, it's easy to come up with ideas to have as a business. It's really hard to, one, put all the tools in place to make it happen, to continue to make it grow, and to properly invest the time. Because when you think of a business or a plan or something you want to do, the thought process is really easy. Taking action is really hard, because there's always going to be little details that take longer or that you didn't expect, or getting the finances in order. All those things add up, and they feel like little barriers that you have to keep jumping over. And it can kind of like, you get in the mindset that you keep going. Everybody goes through struggle. You keep going and you'll be successful. And you go through the mindset of a certain time where whether that business is working out for you, and do you have to keep pushing, or do you have to start something over or shut that one down? And it's very easy to get lots of ideas. So lawn mowing, pressure washing, deck building, 3 ideas you can do to make money right there. Start 3 little businesses. Which one do I pick? Lawn mowing, pressure washing, deck building. Oh, maybe I want to do lawn mowing, then I'll do pressure washing, and then later on I'll do deck building. And then you start adding all these little things. So, okay, I need a lawnmower, I need a hedge trimmer, or a weed whacker, or a lawn trimmer. All right, I need clients. I need to make brochures. I need to go hang door hangers. I need to put my feet on the ground before I even see a client. I need to make Facebook posts, make a Facebook page. I need to have a truck to get to the job sites. Okay, I'm bagging all the grass and I'm taking the grass away. So I've got to take the grass away, make time to go to the dump. Oh, okay, I need this many clients to do this full time each week. Oh, okay, well, I have my first full week booked. I've got all my clients, and then it rains for a week. Okay, now I'm a week behind or whatever, right? And then you're like, is this working out? I'm eating into money I don't have. And at some point you need to make the choice whether you're going to be fully invested or if you're going to shut it down or if you're capable of doing this at all. I think that, like for me, when I start something and I feel struggle in it, it's real easy to have a new idea.
Yes, man, you said everything. That's so true. Like, I'm going to use my situation as some examples here. But one thing I was thinking about, because when you said, hey, come up with a couple topics, think about what you want to say. And I was thinking about this topic and I was like, okay, well, what's the easiest thing to do, right? Like, let's talk about what's easy. And the first thing that came to my mind, and I was like, okay, the easiest thing to do when you're trying to start an ambitious goal, the easiest thing to do is make up an excuse not to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So
and then I was like,
started.
Yeah, exactly. And then I was asking myself, well, what's the hardest thing I could do? Right? Like, let's talk about the hardest thing because that's what people will really take from me. I think that'll be the most value. Mm-hmm. And then the first thing that came to my mind as soon as like, what's the hardest? I was like, overcoming the excuses.
It is the hardest.
That's the hardest thing.
Well, that's
so I was like, that's a perfect thing to say to people. What's the easiest thing? Like, what's the easiest thing to do when you're trying to start a goal? Make an excuse not to do it. Mm-hmm. But what's the hardest? Overcoming those excuses.
Yeah, that's so true.
That is the hardest. And you, like, what you just said, like, sum that up perfectly. Yeah. It's so easy to come up with ideas and talk to yourself about mm-hmm. how you're going to do it or where you want it to go. But then once you start putting your feet on the ground and trying to do it, it gets harder.
Right.
And then once it starts getting harder, you get the self-doubt. Mm-hmm. And self-doubt comes in. And even as you go along, I find, like, even though there's days where I'm like, okay, let's talk about modern men. I was like, yeah, I'm going to build this website. I want to do it. It's going to be successful. I can do this. And then there's days where it's just like, am I really invested into this? Do I really want to do this? Should I change it? And then the next day I'll be like, I can do this.
Yeah. Get the double
self-doubt comes on. Yeah. Yes. And I think when you're doing this kind of stuff, I think the self-doubt will always kind of be there.
Yes.
That's one of the next hardest thing, I think, is to overcome the self-doubt.
Yeah. And you're always going to be your biggest critic. You're always going to be like, oh, it's not good enough, right? Oh, I'm not. That's like this setup that I'm doing now, this podcast, before I did this the way I'm doing it now, we tried even together lots of different like YouTube channels, and me and Sam tried a YouTube channel. I tried doing vlog thing. I've tried different mics, and then I got doing some research, decided all the equipment I wanted to do the podcast and all this stuff. And I purchased all this stuff like a year and a half before I even started doing any recording and troubleshooting. And then after I started figuring out my recording, I was like, no, I need to have the perfect studio. And so I was working on the studio in the shop and figuring that out. And then I was like, oh, I don't want to ever use Zoom or Skype. I always want in-face conversations, and I don't want to do it over the phone. I kept giving myself things to make it more complicated. When right now, as I sit down with you, I've got one light right in front of me, our cell phones, and the recording equipment. I don't have 3 lights and the stools and the table and stuff, although the stools are important, and I will bring them into the future of recording in my home, but I don't have them inside now. But do you know what I mean? Like, you always add things to try and make it perfect when the real thing is to just start. I started this thing and it's not even like, there's no ball rolling yet. It's still so new and I'm still troubleshooting so much, but I gotta stop giving myself reasons to not do it and just do it. Whether it's going to be good or bad at the beginning, it's never that great. So you might as well just do it and grow and get experience. And to tell you the truth, in the last like 3 months that we've been doing this, I've already become better at doing it versus, the first few times I did it. And no matter what my scenario is or what I think I need, doing it, the practice, execution of actually doing the thing is going to make it better all on its own. You don't need to add all this other stuff. Just doing it, making yourself better at what you're doing is the biggest part. If I had everything perfect, walked into a Joe Rogan studio and sat down with a microphone, if I'm still not good, new, fresh, and can't think of anything to talk about or do or bring up, then I've just wasted all that time and effort in that studio. You might as well have not done it, right? Like, you need to just start doing it. Start putting effort in, but then here's a real tricky thing. This is where doubt comes in. When doubt comes in, keep the ball rolling. Even if you're not where you think you should be, the truth is that you'll be where you should be when you put the time in. Not when you put
That's right. You got to keep pushing.
Yeah, you got to keep pushing. And then you also need to know on certain, especially for businesses, this podcast setup doesn't cost me anything anymore. I've invested all the money I'm going to invest in it. I just need to keep doing it. When you're doing a business, like we had our hobby business, you need to learn, and I think we both kind of learned this, when it's not going to work out, when you're not invested, and when the return is not worth the work that you're putting in. And I felt that.
Yeah, that's right.
I felt that earlier than you, and so I left the business before you, and Lucas too, right? Me and him both kind of felt like,
yeah, that's right,
we're not really making the progress we should be, and we're clearly not as invested. You were slightly more invested than we were, and so you carried on a little bit longer, but even you eventually came to the terms that this isn't a sustainable plan, and it's kind of become like a life support system, like a life draining system. It's sucking all your nutrients out that you should be putting time and effort into something else, and until you come up with the mindset that you're going all the way, or you're gonna put this aside. And take what you've learned from those experiences. When you have to walk away from a project or a business or something that you've started, and you know it's time for you to walk away, you can walk away with all the lessons learned and reintroduce those lessons into the next thing. I think it's very important for us to not stop doing things. Like, if we were just like in a situation and nothing ever worked out, and we were like, that's it, we're just going to live the bare minimum now, that's it, I'm done trying, then that's where you're going to stay. People who only do bare minimum and don't continue to try and push and find change and find growth never do, because they're not looking for it. So it's important to keep looking for growth, and important to keep trying new things, but it's also important to know when those things that you're trying to do are no longer effective in your life. Kind of went on a rant there.
No, that was perfect. That's the whole point of the podcast, is to go off on those rants. Yeah, and I totally agree with everything you just said. I think that the amount that I learned from the hobby shop, alone makes it so I don't regret doing it. For everybody watching or listening to this, it's really important to not give up just because something didn't work out, right? The hobby shop that we had didn't work out, and it put me in some financial strain. Like, I almost went bankrupt. Right? Like, you remember, I had to do what's called a consumer proposal, which is literally one step away from bankruptcy. Right? But you know what? The amount that I learned when we went into that business, we didn't know anything. We literally knew nothing about running a business.
Right.
So, like, you barely knew how to.
Yeah, and then you learn those things as you go on. I mean,
that's right.
I wouldn't recommend putting anybody in that risk. But I think that you need to constantly reevaluate as you're going along, especially when it comes to financial risk overall. Like, this podcast, I no longer have any financial risk in it because I'm not using it as an income, and I don't have to constantly invest anything but my time. So those sort of things, if all you have to do now is invest time, then, if as long as you're ambitious, keep pushing forward. If you're starting to have to invest great amount of finance and resources, you need to reassess quite a bit and make sure that you're staying on the right path. Because if you have doubt,
make sure
with
that
big
you're
investment,
not. You don't want to overstrain yourself. With the hobby shop that we had, going through that financial strain wasn't really the end of the world for me because at the time I was single, right? And then near the end, like my now fiance and I, we got together. She was supporting it with me, and I was making a little bit of money and stuff. But then I ended up getting a little bit too ambitious. I made some mistakes with it. But then I had a family, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like you're saying, when it starts to get a little financial strenuous and you have a family, that's when you have to start really thinking like long term, right? Like long term, is the amount of work and stress that this might put on my family really worth it? And that's what I went through when I was kind of coming up to the conclusion of stopping, right? Like I came to the conclusion that if I keep going, I think with my lack of experience, there's a higher risk of me being in a bad financial spot than it is with me making this business successful.
Right.
So I called it quits on the business, and I just sold the last of the inventory on it, which was sweet. So, but I'm taking the stuff that I learned from that and putting it into starting a new business that isn't going to put me in a financial risk.
Right. Yes. So you've learned.
Yeah. But to get back on topic, having multiple ambitious goals and trying to muster up the willpower and create the time allotment to execute it, like that's something that I'm struggling with right now, which is why it's one of the topics I put in.
So my thoughts and advice on that is to pick the most valuable goal to you and tackle that one first, one at a time. Just listening to other podcasts and other people online, it's do more by doing less. That's what I've been hearing more and more as I listen to some self-help and personal growth stuff. Do more by doing less. I think a lot of people are taking on too many goals and aspirations, and then they're not accomplishing any of them because they're spreading themselves too thin. I think that you need to target the most important one and tackle that one first over all the others. Sometimes you can't do that. We both have kids, so kids and starting a business, those two, your goals of how you want to be as a father and the goals you want for running your business, if you're doing them at the same time, well, you're going to have to balance that out. And that leads me into we can combine our two topics now, because that brings me into the topic that I wanted to bring up, which was scheduling. Because me and Sam, we have a real problem scheduling ourselves, and we found and what we have done it in the past, and every time we do it it's successful. When it becomes not successful is like if I get a bunch of time off work and the schedule gets thrown out, it's really hard for us to get back on the boat. So what we're going to start doing again, and we're going to keep trying this over and over until we get it right, is to sit down on Sunday nights and write out our week schedule and put things on the books that we will not stray from unless necessary. And we're going to try and do that with budgeting and spending time with the kids and stuff, because now with 3 kids, it's important to have their one-on-one time and their family time. And with COVID and stuff like that, there's been a lot of family time and not much one-on-one time. So we need to schedule that in. Once you schedule it in and you write it down and everybody sees it, it becomes a priority for everybody. So we've been working on that. Sam's actually really good when it comes to a schedule, holding yourself to it. I think the real problem is me. I'm very easily deterred. And that's something I need to do on self-growth is become not deterred. So to get on all those ambitions and stuff that you're talking about is, I believe that you need to tackle the most priority ones. So maybe take 2 or 3 of them and be like, these are what I'm going to work on, and then give yourself a time frame, and then get a calendar and write it in the books with your spouse or whoever needs to be involved, so that they also understand that at this time period, from this time period, I'm working on the online business. Okay, they see it, they know it's there, it's in the books. There's no disputing it. That's the conversation. Are you okay if I do from this time to this time on this day work on the business? If they say yes, they've committed, you've committed, you write it down. Everybody's committed to that. And it's really easy for me to say it like this, but it's actually extremely difficult to put into action. I'm not sure why, but it is.
I feel like I'm the same way. Crystal and I, we've made schedules, and we've done a pretty decent job at sticking to them. But there's times where it's like you make a schedule and then something that you don't account for comes up. Like we've made a schedule and we've stuck to it for a week from Sunday all the way till Friday. Then on Saturday, our schedule goes to total crap because it's like, okay, well, it turns out that one of our family members needs help with doing this, and they really need help, so I don't want to abandon them because we need to be there for family. Mm-hmm. Then we go and help them, and we're thinking like, all right, it'll only take 20, 30 minutes. And then 4 hours later, you're like, okay, well, we had all this stuff scheduled that we can't do, so we're just going to, you know what, we're just going to start again. Tomorrow we'll start fresh. But it doesn't happen. Yeah. As soon as you abandon that schedule, getting back on the schedule, I almost feel like getting back on the schedule is harder than actually making the schedule in the first place.
Yeah, if you deter. Here's the thing. You said, you got to be there for family. I, yes and no, agree to that. If you have a family member like me and you were brothers, if you needed me on a last minute notice, I can make myself available to do so because you've earned that from me in our friendship and you've reciprocated that sort of behavior. If you have a family member or family members that continuously last minute ask you for things or are not in proper communications or don't establish a relationship with you, then you do not owe them anything for being your family member. You do not have to leave your schedule. When you have a schedule with your family, like your immediate family in your household, and someone outside of that, even though they're still your family, asks you to interrupt that last moment, you're not obligated to do it because they're your family. Not only that, but if they continuously do it, if they do it multiple times, then it's time to just put your foot down and let them know that, hey, if you want me to participate in something, I need this much notice, at least a week, because we do a schedule and I've committed to something else at that time. So, for example, we had one of our brothers move today and I would have loved to have helped, but he did not give me enough notice. Me and Sam planned for her to do something on Saturdays. And so I'm solo with the 3 kids and I'm not giving that up to, for that reason when I could have been given a little more notice, or there could have been a little bit of leeway or something like that, a little extra time than just a few days, then I could have made myself available. But when it's a last minute thing, I feel like if you have a schedule in place, you are not obligated, unless there's an emergency, you are not obligated to participate in whatever it is that they've asked you to participate in. In fact, you should say no if you've already made obligations. If you've made obligations with your wife and your kid, and another family member, a brother or sister, has asked you to do something, your obligation is to your wife and your kid, and vice versa, your spouse and husband. Vice versa, your spouse should do the same. It should be your guys' schedule before other people's schedule, and in certain situations, like I said, if you ask me, that's fine. I can make an exception for you because you've done that for me and we have a good relationship. If you continuously ask me all the time last minute to do something, never ending, I would have to tell you that you needed to give me notice. I would say I need at least a week's notice, a week and a half's notice to put that in the books. So I don't think because someone is a family member, you are obligated to help or participate. That's my thought on that.
No, I totally agree. when I was saying you got to be there for family, I was referring to like let's say active family members,
Mm-hmm.
and even someone who's not necessarily blood related, but someone who's close enough to you that you would consider family. Like
Yes.
I think helping those, like you said, people who've earned it.
Mm-hmm.
Like yeah, exactly what you said. I don't think that if someone who's blood related to you, who's out of the blue is like, hey, long time no talk, how you doing? And you're like, oh, doing great. How have you been? And they're like, awesome. I need your help today.
Yeah. Can you help me first thing? Yeah. You say, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
No, I can't.
In a situation like of helping my brother move, it was super last minute because I think he asked us Wednesday,
Mm-hmm.
Thursday.
Yeah.
But it wasn't even a sure thing. It was, hey, I'm gonna find out if I get a place on Friday, and if I get that on Friday, could you help us maybe move?
Yeah, and I understand his predicament is tight. It's tight when
like
it comes
really
to a last minute move. So I would have participated in helping, and I wanted to. But when I'm the adult watching 3 kids, then I had to make the call not to help. And I kind of was like, oh, I wish I could have, but I got to put Sam's stuff before I put that stuff first.
Right. Like, yeah, I totally agree. If Crystal had obligations to go do something else today, like if she already had plans, or if or Crystal and I were going to go to Victoria and Nanaimo or something, my answer would have already been no. And plus, the thing that it was a little frustrating for me and Crystal helping him move today, because the thing that was supposed to happen is that we were supposed to go there and help him move the big stuff. So he said himself, all we're doing is we're moving couches, the beds, the TVs, and a couple of the shelves over. That's all we're doing today. It should only take us 2 hours. Well, I got there at like 10 after 11 and didn't get home until almost 7.
Right. So here's the thing with those things is that I always expect things to never go as planned. Give yourself more time.
I don't know. Usually when it comes to moving, I automatically think like, oh, it's going to take all day. Like
I always think all
is a
day,
day
yeah.
thing. But for some reason in my head, I even told Crystal when I told her like, oh, I'm going to help Devin move. It'll only take a little bit. I'm going to be there by 11. Should be back by 1:30, maybe 2. And it was like, okay, awesome. Then we'll have all evening together. And it would have been that fast. But instead of putting all the couches and beds and stuff, it was like, every time we put something out, it's like, oh, we have this box that needs to go. This box needs to go too. We need this, and we need this, and we need this. So what really should have been 2 loads of stuff, maybe even 1 if we packed it properly, ended up being 3 loads of stuff.
Holy cow.
And took hours to do.
And then here you are doing the podcast for me, and we're already over an hour into it. So let's jump to
crazy.
Since we combined those 2 subjects of scheduling and being ambitious or making yourself available for multiple things at one time. The next topic I have is airsofting. So you won't be at the next airsoft game, which is on the 18th, because you'll be getting your core, which I'm excited for, and we should talk about that when you get it. So we'll do a podcast strictly on the core and maybe talk about some of our hunting plans for later, the late season hunting, maybe for some coastal black bear. But
nice.
So we're gonna talk airsofting. So we've got a game on the 18th. Up at the gun club, the Victoria Gun Club on the Malahat there, which that's my favorite place to do airsoft. Although you didn't stick around for the last game, you went home early, and we played some close quarter combat in the tire field for the first time, and it was awesome. In fact, Sam was out there rocking it. She rocked me a whole bunch of times. She was pretty proud about herself.
Was it like free for all or what?
It was teams, so it was, I think it was 4 against 4 or 5 against 5. So Lucas and Sam were on the other team, and I was on that. And you could only use green class guns, which is a lower powered gun. It's not as strong. So my rifle fit into the lower class, and then someone lent Sam a rifle that was lower class, and then Luke used his handgun. So and we did 2 rounds, and it was a lot of fun. So I think we're planning on doing more of that. But you missed out on that. It was a lot of fun.
It wouldn't really matter. I didn't have a green class gun.
Yeah, I think we could have put something together for you, but yeah, and I think do we have another one? Yeah, I think Dawn left, so yeah, we probably wouldn't have been able to make it work, I guess. But we're gonna plan some of those fights later on, and then Sam's gonna become regular. She's coming out to the 18th now, and so Lucas, our team is now, so it's Lucas, Dawn, me, you, Sam, and Damien. So we got 6 members of our team. And
That's nice.
Yeah, it is nice. So Lucas has started rebuilding guns. So I'm gonna be getting my second gun off of Lucas when he's done rebuilding. He's got one that I like there, and he's gonna. I think he says he's got it running. He's gonna paint it up, and then I'll be able to use that one. And then Sam has a gun here, and then also I picked up a blowback handgun today or yesterday. I got one.
What does blowback mean?
Blowback means it shoots back like it's a real gun, like a real replica. So even though it's
cool.
shooting airsoft BBs, when you shoot it, the chamber moves, and then when it's out, the chamber locks back, and you gotta change the mag. And
That's cool. You picked one up for yourself?
I found a used one online. Yeah, and it's what is it?
CO2 powered or what?
Yeah, it's CO2 powered, and the model I think is like a CZ /09 P or something like that. I don't know, but it's a nice coyote brown body with the top chamber is black, and it's nice. It's used, and it's got some scuffs, but it's gonna fit pretty good, and it comes with a holster, a lockable holster and stuff. So now I've got the sniper. Which I'm still trying to sell. I've got the sniper, I've got the M4 style G&G, and now we've got the handgun. So now all I need is the other M4 style gun off Lucas, so that we can have pretty much our bases covered.
That's sick. I didn't know you got yourself a blowback gun.
Yeah, I just got that. Pretty excited.
Oh, that's sweet. The pistol I have is so old, and I couldn't even use it when I took it out that one time, because when I lie down in prone or something and I move, the magazine is so big that it pushes against the ground and it starts to break the gun in half.
Oh yeah, yeah. Your magazine
was super cheap
because you had an extra long one. Yeah, the one I've got, it's not. I think there's parts on it that are metal, but I think it's that high density plastic that my rifle's also made out of.
Very cool.
But it's heavy. Like it feels nice to carry in your hand. So, and I haven't shot it yet. Lucas shot it. He picked it up for me, and he says it shoots pretty good. He likes it. So, it'll be nice. I think I'll let Sam use it in the game on the 18th, because I will be doing running with the ghillie suit that I built. So, and then so we won't see you out for another little while, really, into a game.
Yeah, because I think that you guys are saying this is your last one of the season, right?
Well, I don't know if it'll be the other guys' last ones, but I'm going to be taking on hunting more. I've actually, like this time last year, I'd been on a few hunts, and this year I haven't participated in any hunting. So I think because you're getting your core, I'll do more late season hunting this year, and we'll pick out some spots and we'll hike in, because all my hunting buddies that I have now aren't really at the physical peak that I'm at, and I like to walk in, so I'll drive to my location and then go in on foot, where lots of them like to scout from the truck. And I just, as hunting with my bow and stuff, I like to have my feet on the ground.
Yeah, me too. The one thing I'm concerned about is that, like, I wonder if my rifle is going to be too small for hunting.
What do you got?
I got a 223. Or a 30-30, as some people call it.
30-30? I'm not sure. I mean, there's some hunting pages. I don't have my PAL, so I don't know much about the rifle handling aspect, and I don't hunt with a rifle, but I use a bow. So there are many Vancouver Island hunting pages. You should just add yourself on Facebook, and then just ask.
Ask around.
Yeah, ask around.
I didn't think about it until was it Uncle Brian?
Yeah, he said it was small.
Came over? Well, apparently in Alberta, 30-30/223 it's illegal to hunt with that because the rounds are so small that it probably won't kill the animal.
You could,
but because when you go to Alberta, you're hunting bigger game like moose and stuff.
Well, they still have whitetail and stuff out there. They're a bigger whitetail, but we do have smaller animals here. You could probably use that for like grouse, rabbit. I'm not exactly sure. Like I said, I'm not a rifle hunter, so you'll have to ask online.
Yeah, I know. Like my 30-30, it could take down a black bear and a deer.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, and we've got smaller deer here. I would just go online, do a little research, and just make sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to.
Because you could resell that one and go up a body size if you wanted to a bigger caliber.
Yeah, well, we actually got this gun mostly so that Crystal could learn how to shoot. She has her PAL, but she's still never shot a gun before.
Yeah,
we got this one because it's smaller,
right,
and easy. It'll be easy for her to learn with. But I never thought about it being too small for hunting.
Yeah,
especially because like the rounds I buy for it are specifically designed for hunting black bear deer, right?
Yeah. So, well, if your rounds are designed for it, then I don't see why it wouldn't be allowed, but I don't know the laws against that. You would really, the thing that I've noticed about with hunting and stuff is that even when you get your core and you do your courses and take your tests, it's like you always have to dive into the laws and regulations and stuff. Every year I gotta
the nitty-gritty of it.
Yeah, and get into the deep details because there's just so much involved on your location, what you're hunting, where you're hunting, how you're hunting, what kind of gear you're using. Like I think this year they just banned there's like trail cams that you can get that will send a signal right to your cell phone and you can receive the photos instantly. I think you're no longer allowed to use those, or there's been some sort of regulation put in place for those electronics. Some places you can use electronic deer calls and animal calls, and some places you can't, so it gets complicated with that.
Well, the thing is that when I bought the gun, I also asked if I could hunt with it.
Yeah.
So I was concerned about it. And the guy said yes. And he said, when you go for a round like this, you can hunt small and medium game. Like you can hunt a decent sized black bear and deer with it. Just make sure you look for a round designed for it. And I thought, as soon as he said that, I was like, this guy's no idea what he's talking about.
Yeah, I remember when you bought the gun, and I wasn't really confident when I talked to the guy about him knowing exactly what he was talking about, especially because we were talking about hunting the mainland, and he didn't seem to, his information didn't seem to line up with what I had researched, so I was not feeling confident with the person you were working with. And I remember there was an old gentleman that we were trying to get to do the transaction, but we'd been there for a long time, and the older guy was caught up with another client, so he couldn't come and help you. But this young guy, I just wasn't confident in what he was saying.
No, but I mean, he did show us the rounds, and even right on the box on the rounds it says 223 black bear and deer.
Yeah, so
right on it. So I was like, okay, so
just do your research, man. Look online if that's capable, or ask people. Say, go on some of those Facebook pages and ask and say, what are your thoughts on hunting with this caliber of rifle, and see what people say. Yeah,
that's what I have to do.
Hey, buddy,
we totally sidetracked from your topic of airsoft and right into hunting.
Oh, that's okay. We can talk more. But I think we should wrap her up for now.
Yeah, man. Sounds good.
Okay. Thanks for coming on. This was a success, I think.
Thanks for having me over. I'm glad that we got the microphone and stuff.
Yeah.
Figured out.
I don't know
this time around.
How do you hang up on this thing? How do I get out of here? Hit end.